Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video. My name is Nadia and I am the content creator behind dreadlockculture.com. This week I am celebrating my 7-year lock anniversary and I'm bringing you guys 7 different videos, all things dreadlocks, but every day something different. So I hope that you're enjoying them. And after these 7 days are over, I'm going to continue posting on this channel. So if you like what you see, then I invite you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can be alerted next time I post a video. In this video, we're going to be talking about 7 common problems that we can experience with locks, but more importantly, solutions so that we can leave these problems behind us and have beautiful, healthy, and thriving locks. The first problem we're going to be talking about is an itchy scalp. An itchy scalp can be caused by several different things, but the most common causes are dandruff or scalp issues like psoriasis or eczema, or the adjustment that your scalp naturally needs in order to adapt to a new washing routine or a new hair product like shampoo or something like that. In order to find the appropriate solution to this problem, you would have to get to the root cause first. And because there could be several variables going on here, my first and my go-to solution would be to start off with an aloe vera gel spray that you can put on your scalp. I always recommend using the gel straight from the aloe vera leaf. This is because you want a product that has no other added chemicals. In any case, I use this every time that my scalp feels like it's getting a little itchy, and it works wonders for me, and the results are almost instant. So I would use that as the first place if you have an itchy scalp. Another thing you can do is a hot oil treatment on your scalp. And the best time to do this is after you washed your locks because your scalp is already wet and it has that moisture. So the oils are just going to lock in that moisture that's already on your scalp. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can either get a shower cap like this and tuck in all your hair into the shower cap and then heat up a regular towel in the dryer for maybe 5 minutes and then just wrap that hot towel over your head. Let that sit for maybe 15 to 20 minutes and then you would remove that towel and you can rinse it off or you can leave those oils. I typically rinse it off because I don't want those excess oils on my scalp for the remainder of the week, but completely up to you. The other thing you can do is you can get yourself this fancy, not so fancy, but this cap. I don't remember, maybe it costs like $10 to $15 on Amazon. And you plug this in to the socket and it has a heater control. So you can just, do 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes or whatnot. And you would do the same with putting your hair in the shower cap. But because this is fairly small for me, I only do the shower cap over the top of my head. And then you put this on top of that and that you let that sit for the 20 or 30 minutes or however long you decided. And then same thing, you can rinse those off or you can leave those oils on your scalp. It's completely up to you. The next common problem is a sweaty scalp. A sweaty scalp can be caused usually by humidity in the environment or being in a high humid environment or exercising often or a combination of both. So if exercising is the cause of your sweaty scalp, then I recommend using a moisture wicking bandana that looks like this. And you would just put it over your hair and make sure that the larger part goes over the crown of your face. And that's generally where you're going to get a lot more sweat. So then the bandana is going to absorb a lot of that sweat. After you exercise, or maybe after you've been out and about and it's very hot and humid and you can feel just kind of that your scalp is dirty, or I don't want to say the word soggy, but I guess there's no other way to say it. Then you can make a spray, kind of like you would your daily moisturizer spray, to your 2 cups of water and your essential oils. You would add about 2 tablespoons of witch hazel, which is this. And this is an astringent. And the brand that I use is T.N. Dickinson's. It's worked really well for me. Just target the scalp after you've worked out, and your scalp will feel a lot better after doing that. The third thing that you can do is, I generally recommend washing your locks every 7 to 10 days. But if you do exercise a lot or you're sweating a lot in your scalp, then you can do every 5 days. Just make sure that you're washing your locks earlier in the morning and allowing them to air dry during the entire rest of the day. That way, when you go to bed, they are completely dry and you never want to go to bed with wet locks. The third problem a lot of us face are dry locks. Dry locks are generally caused by one of two things. It could either just be that your hair is adjusting to locks, or if you've had your locks for a long time and you notice that they're abnormally dry, it could be the environment or the climate that you're in. And I noticed this in my case every single winter where I live. It gets really, really cold. So I already know in advance that I need to be moisturizing it more often, just because it's screaming for hydration. Now, there's several things that you can do. Number one, and most importantly, you want to be moisturizing your locks with your water and essential oils spray. Maybe instead of doing this once a day, as you normally should be, then you can start doing it twice a day, maybe in the morning and midday, or in the morning and maybe sometime around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The second thing you can do is to spray your locks with rose water. I have a tutorial on how to make your own rose water. And rose water not only smells amazing and it has nourishing properties for your scalp and for your locks, but it also will soften your locks. So if you feel that they're really crunchy, or maybe they're really tight after a maintenance session, then you can spray a little bit of rose water and it'll loosen them up. Now, word of caution, if your locks are not fully mature yet, you kind of don't want to use this too often, just because it's going to loosen your locks. So it's going to be counterproductive to your locking process. But once in a while, maybe every other week or every month, once a month, you can start implementing this, and it will help soften your locks a little bit so that they don't feel itchy on your neck or they don't feel crunchy. You can also do an aloe vera gel soak. I will typically take the entire gel from the leaf and mix it with some water and soak my locks for about 20 to 30 minutes. This will also soften your locks. So again, if they're not super mature, then you want to do it only every so often. Finally, apple cider vinegar works wonders on softening hair and adding shine to your locks. So this is a really good one as well. If you want to do apple cider vinegar in your locks to soften them, then you can do that every time you wash your locks. You can use it as a rinse. But keep in mind that apple cider vinegar obviously is going to smell like vinegar. So it's going to leave that scent on your hair until your locks have dried completely. In the case of those who, like me, it takes you 8 hours to dry your locks in a day, then you're probably going to be smelling that vinegar smell the entire time until your locks have fully dried. So just keep that in mind if you have to go somewhere and you don't want your hair to smell like vinegar. And then another thing about apple cider vinegar is that if your hair happens to get wet, say you go out in the rain and the last thing that you rinsed your locks with was the apple cider vinegar, once your locks get wet again, that smell is going to come back. So just be mindful of that. Finally, another thing that I've been doing in about the last year or so is to steam my locks. And kind of like the hot oil treatment works really well on the scalp, the steamer works really well for adding an extra boost of moisture to your locks. I do this also when my locks are wet. Mine is a traditional clothes dryer, but it's a travel size. It doesn't have the best output. Maybe there are other brands that actually have better output for water. But for the amount of time that I use it, this works really well. If your locks are screaming because they're dry and you need to give them that extra boost, you can do any of these things. And if all else fails, then try the steamer as your last option if you're not sure about investing in one just yet. Number 4 is thinning locks. I get this question asked many, many times, and thinning locks is kind of a tricky problem because it can be due to many different underlying factors. I believe the most common could be a nutritional deficiency. So there's maybe something that your body is lacking, a mineral or some kind of a nutrient that your body is lacking. And until you get that part resolved, it's not going to fix itself. So For that, I think it's really important to go to a doctor and maybe just have a general checkup to see if there's any minerals that your body might be lacking, in which case you would need to maybe take some supplements or eat some extra vegetables or fruits or something to incorporate those nutrients into your body. The second cause could be if you are using hair dye on your locks, then that's something I definitely don't recommend. If you can avoid dyeing your locks at all, then even better. I know a lot of people do this, but this is how I see it. When you dye your hair just normal, it takes, let's say, maybe 20 minutes for the dye to really penetrate the hair, and then you wash it off and all is good. Sometimes. Bleach is a whole nother monster. I think bleach is terrible for hair in general, even if it's loose. And if you look up some YouTube videos, you'll see plenty of people whose entire hair has fallen off just after 1 or 2 bleach applications. So let's skip bleach as a dye for a minute. Let's just talk about the other kind of dye, just regular color dye. Now with loose hair, you can still get a lot of damage from dye, but I think the probability of damage is exponentially worse if you have locks, because when you soak your locks in with that dye mixture, it can penetrate the inner parts of the locks. You might think that you washed off the entire product when in reality you didn't. And so those chemicals are still possibly working inside of the lock and damaging the internal structure of your locks, which then what could happen is over time, you might not see it right away, but over time, once that hair has become so damaged, you're going to find weak spots or even pieces of your locks falling apart completely as a result of that time that you dyed your locks. For this reason, I never recommend dyeing locks. Maybe if you really want a pop of color or something, then put some extensions or accessorize with some beads or something different. But dye can really damage locks. So that's, it's a no for me. The third thing about thinning locks could be just the beginning stages of hair loss. And I'm not going to get ahead of myself because I have something to say about this. But before we treat thinning locks, we need to first discover what is the root cause of the problem. That way we can treat that part and then we'll have a better solution for that. Number 5 on the list, we have lice or bugs in general. I'm going to use the term lice because I think that that's the biggest one that most people worry about. I've never had lice, so this is only speaking from an outsider perspective and a lot of research that I've done on the subject. I've come very close to getting lice. So I've had my moment where I turned my entire house upside down, cleaning and vacuuming and washing everything at high temperatures. So I've explained everything and all my tips in a blog, and I will link that in the description as well if you're concerned about having lice on your locks. But I do want to talk a little bit about prevention, which I believe is more important than anything else, and how we can cure that if you have them. As for prevention, I think it goes without saying, but I typically recommend avoiding head-to-head contact with anybody who's had lice or may have lice or has been in close contact with someone else who's had lice. A lot of the places where you find lice are in schools, unfortunately. And this is not saying anything bad about kids. It's just I'm using it as an example because I know it's an environment where there could be a lot of outbreaks. Anywhere where you suspect there could be a lice problem or an issue, just keep your hair up in a bun or tucked away or covered with a headscarf or something like that. So this is just going to kind of ward them off a little bit. The second thing is you don't want to share personal items. Anything like scarves, hats, maybe even sweatshirts, anything above the head where lice could be prone to getting onto clothes. I actually saw this girl with the most beautiful locks on YouTube before who ended up cutting them off because she got lice from a hat that she tried on at a thrift store. So I'm the kind of person that loves going to thrift stores and I look at all these different items. That's something that stopped me in my tracks. So never try on a hat from maybe a random place where the environment is a little bit questionable. Even if you go to a clean store, just kind of always do like a quick inspection, make sure there's nothing in there, before you put it on your head. The third thing is to check your scalp regularly. Even just talking about lice kind of gets my head a little itchy. So that's one of those things that if you start to consistently feel a head itch, then it could possibly just be dandruff and you might just have that flakiness, or it could be lice. So as soon as you start to feel a consistent itch on your head that maybe doesn't ease up with the aloe vera spray that I mentioned earlier, then have someone check your head right away, because if you can catch them early, then you may not have to cut them off. And then hopefully you'll be pleasantly surprised that it was nothing to worry about. And lastly, you want to use some essential oils that are known for warding off all types of bugs. I use kind of like a concoction of them. I'm going to put a list of the essential oils that are known for preventing bugs, and you can just use as many of those as you want. I also recommend spraying your kids' heads with this spray in the morning before they go to school. And that way, if they're also around other children and there is an outbreak, then there's a chance that your kids might not get them as well. And wouldn't that be lovely if you can avoid all your family from getting them, not just yourself? As for the cure, I would go very aggressive, because you don't want them to keep breeding and growing and making your head a happy and safe place for them to live and thrive. So what I would do is I would go immediately to get a lice treatment. You definitely want to look at the ingredients, but honestly, if I had to choose between lice or buildup, I'll take buildup any day. You can figure out the buildup later, but lice are really tricky and they will multiply if given the perfect environment for that. So attack that problem first. Get yourself a really good lice treatment. I have an article all about bugs and I have a few recommendations if you want to go check that out. Again, that link will be in the description. And I believe that usually most treatments will be for several weeks. So continue to do that. And after you wash your locks, you want to inspect your head for any lice or nits or whatever. These kind of bugs typically have a harder time moving around in wet hair. So this is the best time to catch them. Otherwise, they could be bouncing around everywhere. So to prevent that, after you've done your lice treatment, then follow that up with a head inspection. Have somebody in your family go through your head and pick through the roots or whatever. Nits usually will go as far deep as 1/4 inch into your hair. So if you can go at least 1/2 inch down, even if you have to loosen the roots a little bit, just to make sure that nothing is left, because again, you want to be as aggressive as you possibly can. And if your locks are at the point where at least they're not coming apart, even if they're not fully mature, then your roots will lock up afterwards, no problem. So let's just focus on making sure that nothing is tucked in, that there's no extra eggs or anything like that. After doing a lot of research, I also read that some people were soaking their hair in apple cider vinegar, or their roots rather, in apple cider vinegar, because they said that the vinegar was helping to remove, there's like a stickiness that these bugs have, I don't know, on their claws or whatever. And that apple cider vinegar will help to loosen that grip. And so then once your hair is dry, you can kind of shake them off. I can't tell you from experience, but if you do want to do this, then make sure that you're diluting the apple cider vinegar. And I would probably do about maybe 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar to 5-6 cups of water, something like that. Soak your head for 30 minutes and then rinse it off. And once it's dry, see if you're able to get any of those extra nits out of your head. Number 6 is hair loss, otherwise known as traction alopecia. Hair loss can be a little bit tricky because it could be a hereditary or a genetic thing where just maybe you're at an age where you start losing hair. If that's the case and you have locks, then that's a real bummer. In which case, maybe this is an opportunity to go to Turkey and have, that hair transplant surgery done, which looks extremely painful, but I'm only half kidding. So I guess that has some results. But if that's not the case, it could be the result of 2 main things. Number 1 is that it could be just too much maintenance that you're doing on your roots. Every single time you manipulate your roots, whether it's through interlocking or crochet maintenance, even every time you pull them apart, this is why I say to pull them apart gently. but every time that you touch and you manipulate and you mess with your roots, it does create a level of tension. Even if you're gentle, it's just part of the way that it is. So the best thing is to wait between every retwist or every maintenance session. The minimum that you want to wait between retwist sessions is 6 weeks. I encourage people to wait as long as 8 weeks if you can. I know it's difficult for some people. That's why I say 6 is like the cutoff. Don't go any sooner than 6. But if you can wait longer than 8, maybe you can wait 3 months, 6 months. In my case, it's typically a year. Do that. Of course, I know every hair type is different and some get tangled really easily. So that's, why I kind of leave it open to that. But every 6 weeks is really just kind of pushing it. If you can go 8, that is maybe more of a golden number than 6. But anyway, no sooner than 6, okay? The second thing that it could be a cause of is tight hairstyles. And I've seen this with celebrities where they use these super tight hairstyles, and over the course of years, their hairline just starts receding like crazy. And that's because you're just pulling so much here on the roots that your hair just can't regenerate itself. And then over time, it just doesn't anymore. So for this reason, if you believe that your hairline is receding because maybe you've styled your hair too much or too tight for too long, then try to not style your hair for a really long time. And in the meantime, you can do on your hairline, just mix some drops of castor oil with rosemary essential oil and do that, maybe 2-3 times a week, just to kind of continuously regenerate the hair in those areas. Or if you really have to tie your hair for maybe your job or something and it needs to be really professional and well kept, loosen that area up a little bit on your roots so that you can kind of give it a break. And that will at least help a little bit and possibly reduce your chances of hair loss in the long run. And number 7, last but not least, let's talk about buildup. Buildup is a huge topic, and I think everybody with locks has some degree of buildup. Most of the time, it could just be from environmental factors. If you work in a dusty environment or even just being outside, there's dust, there's dirt. We're going to be prone to absorbing some of that regardless. If you do work in an environment that is heavily or abnormally dusty, maybe a warehouse or outdoors or in construction or any of that kind of thing, then while you're working, just be sure to cover your locks with a do-rag or a bandana or a scarf or something so that there's just less dust getting into your locks. That is more of a preventative method. And then every few months, you can do a detox. And I believe everybody should be doing lock detoxes. I'm not going to get into all the specifics in this video just for the sake of time, but perhaps maybe in the spring when I do mine, I'll give you guys the entire step-by-step. In any case, I have a post on that, so I will link that article in the description. If you feel that your locks are abnormally dirty, or maybe you've never done a lock detox in your life, then I encourage you to do one sooner than later. And usually I do mine around the springtime and the fall. And this just kind of reminds me to keep up with it every 6 months. But there are times that I don't do it and maybe I've waited a year, and you'll be really surprised after your soak what that bucket of water looks like. And you wouldn't even think that there's all this dirt in there. It's pretty gross, but don't be alarmed. It's completely normal. So after you've done your detox, your locks are just going to feel so fresh and clean and maybe even lighter. I think it's one of those things that everybody should be doing. But again, if your locks are brand new or they're not fully mature, then maybe don't do it every 6 months. Do it once a year at most, because it does loosen up your hair a little bit. And again, you don't want to do something that's going to be counterproductive to your locking process. Just like washing your hair, you'll want to do your detox earlier in the morning. That way it gives your hair the entire day to air dry. And in the evening, if it's still maybe a little bit wet, then just dry it with a blow dryer until it's completely dry. Another cause of buildup is wax or gels. And I'm not talking about aloe vera gel because that one's not going to leave residue on your hair. But The kind that in the ingredients label, it could say mineral oil or paraffin or anything that is petroleum based is an absolute no for your hair, as well as beeswax or anything that has a high melting point and that doesn't mix with water is not your friend at all. They're the worst things that you can put on your locks. And unfortunately, I know some people have put that in their hair. So I have a tip. I don't know from experience if this is going to work, only because I've never put wax in my own locks, but I read about this and it kind of makes sense. What you can do is you can take a straightener. This is an old one I have from before I had locks. This one doesn't tell me how hot it gets, but maybe newer ones do. Anyway, you want to get it as hot as you possibly can. Side note, I don't know if it'll damage your hair. So maybe just try it with a few hairs at the bottom here near your neck. And if it works, then continue with the others. But just in case, start with one that you might not be afraid to lose or not be too upset about if it damages it. So you're going to take a paper towel, like a kitchen paper towel, wrap it around your lock, and then you're going to take your hot straightener and slowly but surely you're going to kind of spin your lock around like this. Of course, remember it's going to be wrapped in that paper towel. So essentially the heat from the straightener is going to get into your lock. It's going to melt some of that wax, and then the wax that it melted will be absorbed by the paper towel. Okay? That's the idea. And again, I don't know. Could it work? I think it could. If you decide to try that, let me know if it did anything for you. But if it works, then it might take significant weight off of your locks and it could reduce significant buildup. So there could be a win. I know it's a little bit of a tedious job to go through every single dreadlock and do that. But anyway, that's an option. If you try it, leave me a comment and let me know how that went. And finally, a conversation about buildup wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about my enemy, lint. Lint is tricky because I think anybody with locks is going to be prone to it, and lint can be found anywhere, just even in this sweatshirt. I'm sure there's lint in this and it can get stuck on my hair. But there are certain clothes that are more prone to producing lint than others. For those particular items, you want to put your hair up or cover it as much as possible just to kind of keep those two separated. So in my case, if I'm going out and it's a really cold day, then I will wear a scarf. And for sure, if I'm wearing a scarf, my hair is going up in a bun, and that'll just kind of keep that separated so there's no extra lint on my hair. The other thing I do, as I mentioned in a previous video, is I sleep with a silk bonnet. And if you don't want a silk bonnet, you can get a silk pillowcase. That will also prevent a significant amount of lint from ever getting into your locks. And then finally, every morning when I do my daily moisturizer, I kind of do an inspection. If there's any lint on the surface of my locks, I will pick that out and I will remove it. It's kind of an obsessive thing. That's my OCD right there. If you don't get it out, it's only going to get deeper and deeper over time. So if you do a quick inspection every morning, then you should be good, and it'll keep down the possibility of lint by a huge percentage. So those are my tips with respect to that. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. And if you have any tips or anything that I didn't mention in this video but you'd like to share, then leave those please in the comments below. And if you have any lock questions or concerns, also you can leave those in the comments and I will be happy to respond to any of your questions. If you like this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, ring that notification bell so that you are alerted every time that I make another video. And I will see you on the next one. Bye!